Animators are often compared to actors. However, there's an important difference. An actor feels an emotion and allows behavior to emerge that makes it seem like their emotions are genuine. For an animator, we have to dissect from the outside what qualities an emotion possesses and then apply that to our character to create the illusion that that's what our character is feeling. And this is a very different process. I'm going to show you a trick for organizing emotional information to make that job easier. And we're going to start with a grid. And I'm going to call this grid the emotional matrix. From one side to the other is valence. And valence is basically a word that means whether a feeling is good or bad, or whether it feels good or bad to experience it. On the up and down, I'm going to put arousal, and it's not what you think. That just means what energy is involved in the emotion. Is it a high energy or a low energy state? But let's forget those names for a second, and instead I'm going to use some symbols to make it clear. For high energy, I'm going to use a lightning bunny. And for low energy, I'm going to use a sleepy snail. For positive or good feeling valence, I'm going to go with a warm golden sun. And for negative or bad feeling valence, I'm going to go with a cold bitter rain. So let's take a mildly positive and slightly high energy emotion like pleased. It would probably fall about here on the chart. And if you were more happy and more high energy, you would be delighted. If we go to the other side of arousal, let's say it's still high arousal, but more in the negative territory, maybe you're annoyed. Or if you had even higher energy and even more negative, you might be angry. Heck, if I went and put a mark right here, super negative and really high energy, you'd be in a murderous rage. That's scary. Let's get rid of that. So let's go on to the low side of the energy equation. If it was slightly negative and low, maybe you suffered a disappointment. Bummer. Maybe your true love has left you and you're heartbroken. Or maybe you're deep in the negative territory and low energy that you've completely reached total despair. And then to flesh out the other side of the equation, maybe positive, low energy, you could be relaxed. Or perhaps you've reached a state of absolute relaxation and you're one with all the cosmos. But what's the point of all this? I mean, sure, we can organize emotions based on whether they are positive or negative, high or low energy. But how does that help us as animators? Well, it starts to make more sense if we look at just one axis at a time, whether we're looking at just the negative to positive valence or whether we're looking at high or low arousal. So let's try looking at two high arousal states, but one is negative and one is positive. Here we've got anger and delight. You can see that there are some differences, but let's look at what they have in common. These are both high energy states. So you can see the arms are raised, the mouths are open, there's tension in the body, there are angular lines of action. Both these characters are standing. Even though one emotion is positive valence, the delight, and one emotion is negative valence, anger, the fact that they're both high arousal or high energy means they have a lot of physical things in common. So as an animator, if we were doing a pose where a character was in a state of high energy, these are some of the qualities that we would put in that pose. Let's compare these then with a low energy pose. Here, you can see a fellow is relaxed. There are curving lines of action, the pose is reclining. Now, the open chest and smiling face, this all speaks of positive valence, or that the character's feeling good. It's the curving lines and the way gravity seems to have a big effect on the character. That's where that low energy state comes through. The dude abides. Let's compare that to another low energy state. This dude is depressed. Now it's still a low energy because you can see the reclining posture, the curving lines of action, but we know in this case, this character is sad. Well, how do we know that? Well, unlike the character on the right, he's got a closed-in torso, a tilted down head, his frowning face. All of this speaks of a negative or low valence emotion. So the common elements here are good things to know for energy or arousal. Those curving, flowing lines, the reclining postures, these are all low elements. Let's contrast that then to those angular lines that we saw in those high energy poses. That's high arousal. Now looking at these two poses, the differences between them speak of valence or emotion, whether an emotion feels good or bad. You'll start to see as we understand the elements, we can actually start to apply them to great effect. In fact, I could easily take these two poses and reverse the read that you're getting on them just by changing the elements that speak of valence, or whether an emotion feels good or bad. I'm going to keep these angular lines of action, these raised standing postures. I'm even going to keep the open mouths. But what I'm going to change on them is the facial expression and the hands on one of the characters. And suddenly, the character on the left now looks like they're having a grand old time, and the person on the right looks like they're furiously angry, because I've effectively identified the elements that speak to what I want to create. So let's go back to the chart and summarize. From negative to positive valence, on the negative side of the line, in the body we tend to see closed and sinking gestures. The character tends to be a little smaller. They draw themselves in. In the face, we might see more tension, sagging, or pulling into the brows. We'll definitely see that frowning mouth. On the right side of the line, or positive valence, in the body we might see open or rising gestures. The character will tend to take up more space, be bigger. On the face, we're going to see that smiling mouth, the corners of the eyes, the cheeks, the brows raised up. These are all things that speak of emotions that feel good to experience. Looking at energy levels, on low energy poses, we're going to see curving lines of action. Gravity is going to seem to have a bigger effect on the character. The eyes might be narrowed more often, or the mouth closed. High energy states, we're going to see angular lines of action in the body, tension and energy. We're going to see wide eyes, flared nostrils, maybe even open mouths. As we start to understand the things that go into certain states, it's easy for us to take a pose and say, hey, if I want him to look sadder, these are the things that I'll do. If I want him to look more energetic, these are the things I'll do. And as an animator, understanding how to apply these elements turns you from just an actor to a great actor. And that's the point of the emotional matrix.